Will Meta Quest 3 outsell the Quest 2? Nope. That's it for this week's video. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching. Just kidding. In today's video, we're talking about my expectations for Quest 3's overall sales, including the advantages and disadvantages it will have over Quest 2 in the marketplace. I wasn't kidding about my answer. I don't think Quest 3 will sell more units than Quest 2, but that doesn't mean the headset will be a failure. Later, I'll explain why. We'll start with Quest 3's disadvantages, as I think they're more obvious. First of all, we're not in the middle of a pandemic anymore. The Quest 2 launched in October of 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 mandated lockdowns. Now, depending on where you are in the world, your local government may have already started opening things back up, but the large majority of the world were still spending 90% of their time at home, while businesses were trying to figure out how to properly reopen with social distancing. Stock prices for video conferencing companies like Zoom had gone through the roof. Meal delivery services like DoorDash and Uber Eats were also raking in record profits. And in the middle of all this, Meta releases a standalone 6-off headset, one that was a generational leap above its predecessor in terms of specs, at the insanely low price of $300. It really was the perfect storm. Then there's Quest 3's price. I've talked about this in multiple other videos, so I won't spend too much time on it here, but Meta is about to be the victim of their own success. See, it's my opinion that Meta's marketing of the Quest 2 as a value-driven unit convinced the general public that the market rate for a VR headset should be around $300. Any enthusiast will tell you that's ridiculous, but we're the vocal minority here just screaming into the void. The reality, pun fully intended, is that your average consumer who saw value in $300 won't see it at $500, specs be damned. Even if Quest 3 were a generational leap above Quest 2, which sadly I don't feel like it is, $500 is a bridge too far for a VR headset, particularly for the surprisingly high number of Quest 2 owners that aren't gamers in general. There are more of those people than you might realize. The next disadvantage is the Quest 2 itself. Meta has confirmed that the Quest 2 will still be sold alongside Quest 3. I think this is a mistake. Maybe run out the existing stock, but keeping the Quest 2 on the market for $200 cheaper absolutely handicaps Quest 3's potential. That's not even counting the secondary market where I picked up a used 128GB Quest 2 for my daughter for $200. If you look at Quest 3's marketing, and there's a lot of it out there, all of it is about things that don't connect with the average consumer. 40% thinner and better mixed reality isn't going to move 10 million units. People will look at Quest 3, look at the price, and that's why they shouldn't go with a Quest 2, and frankly, I don't blame them. Quest 3's final disadvantage is it really feels like VR's second honeymoon period is over. The first, albeit brief honeymoon period, was the launch of Half-Life Alyx, which is the closest thing PC VR has ever had to an exclusive system seller, Beat Saber aside. Alyx admittedly sold a fair amount of headsets. Then the second bigger honeymoon was during the pandemic when people were scooping up Quest 2s, and after the novelty of waifu dancers in VR chat and grinding Camelia's Ghost on Expert Plus and Beat Saber wore off, people were left wanting more. Now you're seeing Quest 2s pop up for sale in the secondary market in droves, or worse yet, collecting dust in closets. Casual VR owners are saying there's nothing to play, while PC VR diehards are blaming Meta for the downgrading games over the last 3 years. Quest 3 is not going to benefit from the buzz around VR that Quest 2 enjoyed. I want to pause here to remind you, if you haven't already, to tap the like button. I'm going to be doing, among other things, a ton of Quest 3 coverage in the months to come. User guides, hidden features, tips and tricks. So if you're on the fence about subscribing, but you're looking for a channel that's going to help you get the most out of your headset, you found it. So go ahead and tap the subscribe button too, you won't be disappointed. So Meta really has their work cut out for them, but it's not an entirely hopeless situation as Quest 3 has some things going for it. For starters, lack of overall competition. When ByteDance acquired Pico and announced their intentions to launch a new consumer headset, the Pico 4, everyone heralded this as true competition for Meta. Fast forward nearly a year, and it hasn't really happened. Pico 4 to date is not launched in North America, consumer VR's biggest market, and is still struggling to garner interest on the standalone gaming front. If you go to Pico's store, you'd be hard pressed to find any top exclusives, and right now, its best purpose seems to be a budget-friendly PC VR headset. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to move 10 million plus units. Plus, we're still waiting for Just Dance VR, that big exclusive Pico promised when they launched, while reportedly they're shifting their focus to hand tracking to compete with the Fruit Company. We've also seen new headsets from Pimax and Varo, but those are clearly for the enthusiast crowd and no threat to Meta. HTC's Vive XR Elite entered the standalone fray with a whimper, and like the Pico 4, its best usage right now is as a PC VR headset, which HTC has actually taken great pains to market it as such. Unlike Pico 4, XR Elite is far from a value proposition at $1,100. Then there's PSVR 2, which was going to save VR from Meta's evil clutches. It came out of the gates roaring with Horizon Call of the Mountain, Resident Evil Village, and Gran Turismo, but within weeks it seemed like everyone was already calling on Sony to do more. To date, about 6 months later, those 3 games are the biggest games still on the console. I'm recording this video in the same week that the most recent PSVR 2 titles in the hype cycle, Firewall Ultra and Crossfire Sierra Squad, were launched, and reception has been, we'll say, divided. PSVR 2 is, on paper, a top-tier headset, OLED panels, eye tracking, adaptive triggers, headset haptics, and with all of that, while it's still outselling PSVR 1, it hasn't been the boon to the industry many were hoping for. Basically, a few contenders, including several I didn't even mention, stepped up and took a run at the king, but at the time of this video, they all missed. So now, here at the end of August, as I record this with Quest 3's release a few short weeks away, all attention is shifting back to Meta, further bolstered by a major new player I'll talk about in a minute. There are other headsets on the way from companies like Somnium, Big Screen, and Immerse, but nobody really expects any of them to compete on Meta's level, and to be honest, I don't think any of them are trying to do so. They all have very specific use cases and will stay in those lanes. The other big advantage, believe it or not, is Apple. Apple's entry into the market with the upcoming Vision Pro is already bringing a bigger spotlight to VR than it's ever had. Never mind that the headset costs $3,500 and Meta didn't say the words virtual reality once during the headset's unveiling, this is still one of the biggest companies in the world entering the ecosystem. And getting back to the $3,500 price tag, that's going to send people, non-gaming people, looking for other, cheaper options for headsets. Some of this, as stated earlier, will be cannibalized by the fact that the Quest 2 is still on the market for cheaper, but I think it's fair to say Meta is going to be the primary fallback plan for folks who want a headset after Apple's incredible marketing efforts, but can't afford over $3,000 for one. Even if a Quest headset can't do everything Vision Pro does, people will make compromises for the sake of their wallets. Also, Meta still does own 9 different VR studios. Several of those companies have seen layoffs in the last couple of years, but all indications are they're still actively working on projects. With No Camouflage is working on the Batman VR game, Ready at Dawn just shut down Echo VR, much to the chagrin of the VR community, to free up resources for their next big project. Population 1, Beat Saber, Onward, and Supernatural continue to get updates and still remain very popular. Twisted Pixel posted a job opening recently, specifically looking for developers for their next big project. Sanzaru Games has Asgard's Wrath 2 coming, and we're still not sure what Armature is up to these days. That's a lot of highly talented teams that have been silent for some time, just waiting in the wings to presumably bring the heat with Quest 3's launch. We hope. Lastly, Meta has all but sewn up the next generation of VR gamers. Again, hear me out. Thanks to the popularity of games like Rec Room, Gorilla Tag, and a host of other free-to-play games, I wager Meta has the largest share of young players 13 and under of any VR platform. That's going to be huge come holiday season and for years to come. I'm 42 years old as I record this video. I'm going to age out of VR before my 11-year-old daughter does. She already spends nearly as much time in VR as I do, and I work in VR for a living. Think about when you were a kid submitting your Christmas list. If you grew up a gamer, chances are there was a list of games or even a new console on that list. That's a massive advantage Meta has right now. In an age where parents are willing to drop $1,000 on a smartphone for their elementary and middle school age kids, and prices for gaming consoles range from $300 to $500, it's not absurd to think Quest 3 will be on more than a few Santa Claus wish lists. I didn't even mention Roblox coming to Quest. Having said all that, I still think the cons significantly outweigh the pros. It's really hard to see Quest 3 outselling Quest 2 right now with everything I just laid out. This doesn't mean I'm expecting Quest 3 to bomb like Quest Pro did. I think it'll do fine numbers, possibly even enough to overtake PSVR 1, currently the second best selling VR headset ever made. I've seen some rhetoric around social media and even in the comments on my channel saying VR is doomed if Quest 3 doesn't sell more units than Quest 2. I don't believe this at all. Off the top of your head, can you name the best selling video game console ever? I'll give you a hint, it's over 20 years old. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it. It's the PlayStation 2, 155 million units sold worldwide in its lifetime. No other PlayStation console, or any console for that matter, has ever sold this many. Does that mean that the PlayStation 3, 4, and 5 are all failures? No. I do feel like we're hitting the VR inflection point though, where the headsets being put out by multiple different companies, despite each of them having compromised in different places, are all highly capable hardware. What's lacking is the software, the games, and that's across the board, not isolated to Meta. I believe Meta has learned this lesson after Quest Pro's abject failure. They just put on the biggest VR gaming showcase they've ever done. Executives like Mark Rapkin have openly stated they know they have a retention problem and they need to convince consumers that Quest 3 will be worth it. The 2 most common questions I see in any VR community, regardless of platform, are, is insert game here worth buying? And I just got VR, what are some good games to play? We want games. I sincerely hope Meta and every other VR company finally understands this. We'll all find out together this fall and holiday season. I hope you'll join me for the ride. It'll be interesting if nothing else, and I promise to always give my honest opinion, for better or worse. Speaking of common questions, go ahead and click on the video on the screen right now where I answer all the common questions about Quest 3. And as always, thank you for watching.